South Africa. You've probably heard of it. It's that country way down at the southern tip of Africa. Like if Africa was wearing stylish boots, South Africa would be the very cool, very pointy end of one of those boots. It's a place with a lot going on. You've got incredible wildlife, stunning mountains and beaches that make you want to forget your email password. But beyond the pretty pictures, there's a history. A massive, complicated and super important history. It's a story that's not just about South Africa, but about people everywhere, about fighting for what's right. It's got heroes, it's got villains, it's got moments that will make you cheer and moments that will make you think really hard. This country, officially known as the Republic of South Africa, is often called the Rainbow Nation. That's a name Archbishop Desmond Tutu came up with. It points to the incredible diversity of its people, cultures and languages. 11 official languages, can you imagine? That's like having 11 different ways to say hello and where's the bathroom, and they're all official. This diversity is a huge part of its strength, but it also hints at the complex journey the nation has undertaken. From ancient civilizations to a painful era of division and then to a hopeful but still challenging democracy. It's a story of resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure and to change. Understanding South Africa's past is like getting the keys to understanding a lot of the world's current conversations about race, justice and reconciliation. The things that happened here, the struggles and the triumphs, they didn't just stay within its borders. They echoed across continents, inspiring people and sometimes serving as a warning. We're going to take a walk through this history. Not a super fast sprint, because you miss all the good stuff that way. We'll take our time, look around and try to make sense of how this nation at the end of Africa became a beacon of so many important global stories. So buckle up, we're starting this journey way back. Before the headlines, before the famous names many of us know. We're going to the very beginning, to the first people who called this dramatic landscape home. Because every good story has a strong start, and South Africa's story started thousands and thousands of years ago. It's a tale of survival, of art, of community, long before ships from faraway lands appeared on the horizon. This foundation is crucial because it sets the stage for everything that came after, shaping the very soul of the nation. Well, long before any Europeans dreamed of sailing around the tip of Africa, people were already living there for a very, very long time, which we're talking tens of thousands of years. These were the original inhabitants, the true pioneers of the land. The two main groups we often hear about are the San and the Khoikhoi. The San people were incredible hunters and gatherers. They knew the land like the back of their hand. They could read the signs in nature, find water where it seemed impossible, and track animals with amazing skill. They were also artists, leaving behind stunning rock paintings in caves and shelters all across southern Africa. These paintings are like ancient photo albums, or maybe a prehistoric version of Instagram. They show us scenes of daily life, hunting expeditions, spiritual rituals, and the animals they shared the land with, eland, elephants and giraffes. These weren't just pretty pictures, they were deeply symbolic, connecting them to their spiritual world and preserving their history and beliefs. The Khoikhoi, on the other hand, were pastoralists. This means they kept livestock, mainly cattle and sheep. They were skilled herders, moving with their animals to find fresh grazing lands. They had a more settled lifestyle than the San, but still lived in harmony with the environment that sustained them. These early societies were complex and rich in culture. They had their own languages, social structures, traditions, and deep spiritual connections to the land. They understood the rhythms of nature, the changing seasons, and the importance of community. For countless generations, they lived relatively undisturbed, shaping and being shaped by the diverse landscapes of southern Africa, from the dry Kalahari to the lush coastal regions. Their knowledge of medicinal plants was extensive, and their storytelling traditions passed down wisdom through the ages. They were the first chapters in South Africa's long human story, a story of adaptation and resilience. It's important to remember these first peoples because their story is the bedrock of South Africa's history. Their displacement and the disruption of their way of life, with the arrival of new groups, first Bantu-speaking peoples, migrating from further north in Africa, and then much later Europeans, marked a significant turning point. But their legacy endures. It's in the ancient art, in the names of places, and in the DNA of many South Africans today. They are a vital part of the nation's heritage, a reminder of the deep roots of human existence in this part of the world, long before it was ever called South Africa. Fast forward a few thousand years, it's the 15th and 16th centuries. European explorers are getting really into sailing. They're looking for new routes to the east, specifically to India and the Spice Islands. Spices were like gold back then. Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, was the first European to successfully sail around the southern tip of Africa in 1497. He didn't stop and set up a mall, but he showed it could be done. This opened the door, quite literally, for more ships to follow. For a while, these were just passing visits, ships stopping for fresh water and supplies. But that was about to change in a big way. The year is 1652. This is a key date. The Dutch East India Company, or VOC, Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, which was basically the Amazon of its day, but for spices and trade, decided they needed a permanent pit stop, a kind of service station for their ships on the long, tough journey to Asia. So Jan van Riebeek, an employee of the VOC, arrived at the Cape of Good Hope. His mission was not to start a colony, it was to set up a refreshment station, grow some vegetables, get some fresh meat, and provide a place for 6 sailors to recover. Simple, right? Well, simple plans often get complicated. This small refreshment station started to grow. More Dutch settlers, called freeburgers, were allowed to start farms to supply the ships. Slowly but surely, this little outpost expanded. And as it expanded, it pushed further into the lands that were already home to the Khoikhoi and San. This, as you can imagine, led to conflict. The Khoikhoi, who were herders, saw their grazing lands taken over. Their cattle were traded, often under unfair terms or sometimes just seized. Diseases brought by the Europeans, like smallpox, also had a devastating impact on the indigenous populations who had no immunity. So, what started as a logistical decision by a company far away in Europe began to fundamentally change the social and political landscape of the Cape. The Dutch settlers, over generations, started to see themselves less as Dutch citizens abroad and more as people of Africa, or Afrikaners. Their language, evolving from Dutch, became Afrikaans. This growing settlement, with its increasing demand for land and labor, laid the very early foundations for the systems of control and segregation that would, centuries later, morph into something much more formal and brutal. The arrival was not just of people, but of new power dynamics. The Dutch weren't the only European power interested in strategic spots around the world. Enter the British. Britain was a major global power, and the Cape, with its strategic location on the sea route to India, was too valuable to ignore. During the Napoleonic Wars in Europe, late 18th, early 19th century, Britain occupied the Cape to prevent it from falling into French hands, as Holland was under French influence at the time. After some back and forth, the Cape officially became a British colony in 1806. This change brought in a new language, new laws, and a new colonial administration. It also brought more British settlers. The arrival of the British caused a lot of friction with the Dutch-descended settlers, who were by then known as Boers, which means farmers in Dutch Afrikaans. The Boers had their own distinct culture, language, Afrikaans, and a strong independence streak. They weren't keen on British rule, British laws, or British ideas about things like the abolition of slavery in 1834, which impacted their agricultural economy that relied on enslaved labour. This unhappiness led to a major event called the Great Trek, starting in the 1830s. Thousands of Boers packed up their wagons and moved inland, away from British control, to establish their own independent republics in the interior of what is now South Africa. These Boer republics, primarily the Orange Free State and the Transvaal, South African Republic, soon found themselves in further conflict, not just with the indigenous African kingdoms they encountered and often fought as they expanded, like the Zulu, Xhosa and Sotho, but eventually again with the British. Why? Well, diamonds were discovered in Kimberley in 1867, then massive gold deposits were found in the Transvaal in 1886. Suddenly these Boer republics were sitting on incredible wealth. And where there's wealth, there's often trouble, especially when a major imperial power wants a piece of the action. This discovery of mineral riches dramatically changed the economic and political landscape. This all culminated in a series of wars, most notably the South African War, also known as the Second Boer War, from 1899 to 1902. It was a brutal conflict between the British Empire and the two Boer republics. The British eventually won, but at a great cost. After the war, Britain sought to unify its South African colonies, Cape and Natal, with the defeated Boer republics. This led to the creation of the Union of South Africa in 1910. It was a self-governing dominion within the British Empire. But here's the crucial part. This new union was largely established by and for white South Africans, both British and Boer. Black Africans had very few political rights, setting a very dangerous precedent for the future. Section 5, the Dark Chapter, Apartheid Takes Hold. After the Union of South Africa was formed in 1910, policies of racial segregation continued and in many ways became more systematic. Black South Africans were largely excluded from political power. Land Acts were passed that severely restricted black land ownership, pushing them into overcrowded reserves or forcing them to work for white farmers and in the mines. But the system that would become infamous worldwide truly began to take formal shape after the 1948 general election. The National Party, dominated by Afrikaners, came to power. Their main campaign promise, a policy called Apartheid. Apartheid literally means apartness or separateness in Afrikaans. It was a system designed to completely segregate South African society along racial lines: white, black, coloured, people of mixed race, and Indian. The government believed that each race had its own destiny and should develop separately, but in reality it was all about ensuring white supremacy and control. They passed a flood of laws to enforce this. The Population Registration Act classified every South African by race. The Group Areas Act dictated where each race could live and own property. The Immorality Act made relationships and marriage between different races illegal. Daily life under apartheid was defined by these laws. Black South Africans needed passes, identity documents to enter so-called white areas, even to work. Failure to produce a pass could mean immediate arrest. Education was segregated and hugely unequal, with schools for black children receiving far less funding. Healthcare, public transport, beaches, parks, even park benches and public toilets were segregated. The best facilities were always reserved for whites. Black people were denied the right to vote in national elections, denied skilled jobs, and subjected to constant humiliation and discrimination. It was a system designed to control every aspect of life for the majority of the population. This wasn't just social custom, it was legally enforced, brutal repression. The government created so-called homelands or Bantustans, supposedly independent states for different black ethnic groups. These were typically barren, overcrowded areas with no real economy. The idea was to strip black South Africans of their South African citizenship, making them citizens of these pseudo-states. This way, the white minority could maintain political control over the majority of the land and its resources. Apartheid was an attempt to engineer an entire society based on racial hierarchy, and it would cast a long, dark shadow for decades. Section 6. Voices of Defiance, the Struggle for Freedom. People in South Africa did not just passively accept apartheid. From the very beginning, there was resistance. It came in many forms: peaceful protests, strikes, civil disobedience, and eventually armed struggle. Organizations like the African National Congress, formed way back in 1912 to defend the rights of black South Africans, became central to the anti-apartheid movement. Other groups like the Pan-Africanist Congress and the South African Indian Congress also played vital roles. They organized campaigns, challenged unjust laws, and tried to mobilize people against the system. The government, however, responded to this resistance with increasing brutality. A turning point was the Sharpeville massacre on March 21st, 1960. A large crowd of unarmed black protesters had gathered outside a police station in the township of Sharpeville to demonstrate against the hated pass laws. The police opened fire on the crowd, killing 69 people and injuring many more. Most were shot in the back as they tried to flee. This event sent shockwaves across South Africa and around the world. It led to the banning of the ANC and PASI, forcing them to go underground and, for some, to adopt armed struggle as a tactic. Another pivotal moment was the Soweto uprising, which began on June 16, 1976. Thousands of black high school students in Soweto, a sprawling township southwest of Johannesburg, marched in protest against a government decree that forced them to learn certain subjects in Afrikaans, the language they associated with their oppressors. Police responded with tear gas and live ammunition. The image of 13-year-old Hector Peterson, shot dead by police and carried by a fellow student, became a global symbol of the brutality of apartheid and the courage of young South Africans fighting for their future. The uprising spread across the country and lasted for months. The struggle against apartheid was long and incredibly difficult. Many activists were arrested, imprisoned, tortured, or forced into exile. Leaders like Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and Govan Mbeki were sentenced to life imprisonment. Despite the repression, the spirit of resistance never died. Inside South Africa, community groups, trade unions, religious leaders like Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and brave individuals kept the fight alive. Internationally, the anti-apartheid movement grew with calls for boycotts, sanctions, and diplomatic pressure on the South African government. The world was slowly waking up to the horrors of the system. Section 7. Madiba's Walk, Nelson Mandela and the Dawn of Democracy. When you talk about the end of apartheid, one name stands out: Nelson Mandela. Known affectionately as Madiba, his clan name. He was a lawyer who joined the ANC in the 1940s and became a key figure in the fight against racial segregation. He helped form the ANC Youth League, pushing for more militant action. After the Sharpeville massacre and the banning of the ANC, he co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, Spear of the Nation, the armed wing of the ANC. In 1964, he was arrested and sentenced to life imprisonment, largely for his anti-apartheid activities. He spent 27 incredibly long years in prison, much of it on Robben Island. During those 27 years, Mandela became a powerful symbol of resistance against apartheid, both in South Africa and internationally. A global campaign for his release grew stronger year by year. Inside prison, he remained a leader, an inspiration to other political prisoners, and a figure of unwavering principle. He refused offers of conditional release that would have compromised his beliefs or the goals of the ANC. By the late 1980s, the South African government was facing intense internal pressure from ongoing protests and strikes, as well as crippling international sanctions and growing isolation. Change was becoming inevitable. Then came the moment the world had been waiting for. On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from prison. His walk to freedom was broadcast live across the globe. It was a profoundly symbolic event, signaling the beginning of the end for apartheid. After his release, Mandela didn't call for revenge. Instead, he called for reconciliation and negotiation. He worked closely with the then state president, F.W. de Klerk, and other leaders from across the political spectrum to navigate the difficult path towards a new democratic South Africa. It was a period of intense negotiations, often fraught with tension and violence, but the commitment to a peaceful transition held. Finally, on April 27, 1994, South Africa held its first ever multiracial democratic elections. For the first time in the country's history, all adult citizens, regardless of race, were allowed to vote. Long lines of people, many of whom had never voted before, snaked around polling stations. It was a day of incredible joy and profound significance. The ANC won a landslide victory, and Nelson Mandela became the first president of a free and democratic South Africa. It was the dawn of a new era, a moment of immense hope for a nation that had endured so much pain and division. Section 8. Building a Rainbow Post-Apartheid Hopes and Hurdles. With Nelson Mandela as president, South Africa embarked on the massive task of dismantling apartheid and building a new, inclusive society. The Rainbow Nation became the hopeful metaphor for this new beginning, a term popularized by Archbishop Desmond Tutu to describe the country's diverse peoples coming together. One of the most significant early initiatives was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, chaired by Tutu. The TRC was not about punishing perpetrators of human rights abuses during apartheid, but about uncovering the truth. Victims shared their stories, and perpetrators could apply for amnesty if they made full confessions. It was a painful but necessary process aimed at healing and national unity. The new government quickly set about repealing apartheid laws and creating a new constitution, which is considered one of the most progressive in the world. It guarantees a wide range of human rights, including equality, dignity, and freedom from discrimination. Efforts were made to desegregate schools, residential areas, and public services. Affirmative action policies were introduced to try and address the economic imbalances created by decades of racist policies, aiming to give black South Africans and other disadvantaged groups more opportunities in employment and business. There was a huge sense of optimism and a belief that a truly non-racial democratic society could be built. However, the legacy of apartheid runs deep, and the journey has not been without its challenges. The economic disparities created by centuries of colonialism and apartheid were and remain enormous. While a black middle class has grown, widespread poverty, high unemployment rates, especially among young people, and extreme inequality continue to plague the nation. Access to quality education, healthcare, and housing for all remains a significant hurdle. Crime rates are high in many areas, often linked to socio-economic desperation. These are complex problems with no easy solutions. Despite these ongoing struggles, South Africa has made incredible strides. The country has a vibrant civil society, a free press, and a robust democratic system with regular elections. There's a new generation of South Africans, born free, who have grown up without the direct experience of apartheid's daily humiliations. Though they still live with its consequences, the dream of the Rainbow Nation is constantly being tested and re-evaluated. It's a continuous project, a work in progress, requiring constant effort to address the injustices of the past while building a more equitable future for everyone. Section 9, Mzansi today, a modern nation with a powerful story. So, what is South Africa, or Mzansi, a popular Xhosa name for South Africa meaning south? Like in 2025, it's a country of incredible contrasts and dynamism. You have world-class cities like Cape Town with its stunning Table Mountain, and Johannesburg, the bustling economic hub. You also have vast rural areas still grappling with poverty. The country boasts a relatively sophisticated economy, rich in mineral resources, and is a leader in many sectors on the African continent. It's a constitutional democracy with a multi-party system, an independent judiciary, and a commitment to human rights, even if the implementation often falls short of the ideals. Culturally, South Africa is a powerhouse with its 11 official languages: isiZulu, isiXhosa, Afrikaans, English, Sepedi, Setswana, Sesotho, Sitsonga, Siswati, Tshivenda, and Ndebele. It's a melting pot of traditions, music, dance, and art. South African music genres like Kwaito, Amapiano, and Afrikaan rock have gained international recognition. Its writers, artists, and filmmakers continue to tell compelling stories that resonate globally. The cuisine is a delicious fusion of African, European, and Asian influences. This cultural vibrancy is a source of national pride and a testament to the resilience and creativity of its people. On the global stage, South Africa plays an important role. It's a member of international bodies like the G20, BRICS, and the African Union. It often acts as a voice for the African continent and for developing nations. Its own journey from pariah state under apartheid to a respected democratic nation gives it a unique moral authority on issues of human rights, reconciliation, and justice. However, it also faces challenges in its foreign policy, balancing its historical alliances with its current economic and political interests in a complex global landscape. Looking ahead, South Africa's story is far from over. The nation continues to grapple with the deep scars of its past, particularly the stubborn issues of inequality, unemployment, and social justice. There are ongoing debates about land reform, economic transformation, and how to best deliver on the promises of 1994 for all its citizens. But South Africa is also a country of immense potential, with a youthful population, abundant resources, and a demonstrated capacity for change and innovation. Its journey through time, from ancient civilizations to a complex present, offers lessons and inspiration for a world still striving for fairness and understanding. The Rainbow Nation continues to write its next chapter,